In the vast darkness of deep space, the crew of a small freighter finds a strange, ancient pod drifting inside a deadly nebula. Inside is a boy who is both human and a living weapon, programmed to think only in tactics and survival. As the crew slowly helps him learn what it means to be more than a machine, they face danger from pirates and powerful forces that want to take him back. This story is full of tension, quiet moments of hope, and hard choices about family, purpose, and what makes someone truly human. The mood is intense and emotional, with moments of fear, wonder, and courage. The stakes are high, not just for the boy's life, but for the future of a broken galaxy where old wars still haunt the stars. Will this lost weapon find a home? Or will the cold machines that made him claim him once more? The nebula stretched before the redemption's chain like a silent storm. Purple and green gases swirled and twisted, hiding dangers that could tear a ship apart. To most crews, it was a graveyard, a place where vessels vanished and never returned. But Captain Kovar's freighter was worn, stubborn, and desperate for work. Every credit mattered. So when his patchwork communications array picked up a strange signal buried deep in the noise, he didn't hesitate. The signal wasn't just a call for help. It was a military code, ancient and almost forgotten, pulsing through channels long dead. Kovar knew the code well. He had helped create it in a past life, a life filled with cold calculations and hard orders. That life haunted him now, swirling beneath the dark surface of his smooth obsidian faceplate in shifting colors, guilt, doubt, regret. "Captain," said Syl, the pilot, her voice bright and sharp like a warning bell. "You're doing that purple thing again. The nebula gets to you, huh?" He forced the colors back to calm blues. "It's nothing. Just an echo from a war long dead." Grail, the ship's engineer, grunted from behind her console. Her 4 strong arms moved over the controls with quick, practiced motions. "That signal you found, it's Directorate military grade. High-level encryption. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing." Kovar nodded. "Can you trace it?" "Deep inside the spiral. 3 or 4 hours off course. A real risk. Could be pirates setting a trap with old codes." Syl was already plotting new routes, her eyes dancing over screens full of numbers and paths. "If it's real, every scavenger for 3 systems will pick up that signal soon. We have first mover advantage." From the medical bay doorway, Flynn the medic shuffled in, holding a tray of strange alien protein bars. "We're behind schedule," he said softly. "The Kestis mining colony is counting on us. Their water recyclers are failing, and they need our scrubbers." Kovar looked at the worn faces around him. They needed the money. But this signal, it was marked Priority 1. It wasn't about money. It was about something precious, something lost. "The colony can wait," Kovar said quietly. "We chase this ghost." The crew set to work. Syl changed their course. Grail prepared the salvage arms. Flynn promised hot soup, his grandmother's recipe, for whatever they might find. The nebula grew thick and cold outside the ship's viewport. Then, through the swirling clouds of gas and dust, a shape appeared, a metal pod, ancient and scarred, floating alone. Its surface glittered faintly under the chain's lights. The faded insignia of the Directorate fleet was barely visible, worn away by time and space. The pod's emergency beacon pulsed, weak but steady. It was a voice calling from the deep, a secret from a forgotten war. "Power cells holding by luck and prayer," Grail muttered as she maneuvered the salvage claws. "This thing's held together by duct tape and hope." With a heavy thud, the clamps locked onto the pod. The metal hummed, vibrating through the deck. Kovar's med scanner flickered. "Life signs. Anyone inside?" A faint blip. "Weak. Human." Flynn rushed to the salvage bay airlock as Kovar and Grail followed. The hatch hissed open, releasing a cloud of cold, stale air that made Flynn sneeze. Inside, lying still on a narrow bench, was a boy. He looked no older than 12. His skin was pale, almost too perfect, as if he had never felt sunlight. His black hair was cut close to his scalp, neat and clinical. He wore a gray jumpsuit, marked with a faded code, Echo 7. The silence in the room was thick. Even Grail, who could lift heavy power conduits with ease, took a step back, hands raised. Suddenly, the boy's eyes snapped open. No confusion. No fear. Just sharp, cold awareness. He sat up in a single smooth motion, spine straight, hands flat on his knees. His voice was flat, mechanical. Operational status suboptimal. Current location unknown. Identify authority figure present. The words cut through the room, clear and perfect English, a language most of the galaxy only knew from dusty archives. Kovar struggled to speak. I am Captain Kovar of the Redemption's Chain. You're safe. The boy tilted his head with exact precision, as if adjusting a sensor. Designation Echo 7. Project Chimera. Primary handlers, MOT-HER and CI Nitary grade training constructs. Query, are you Directorate aligned? Grail growled softly. The Directorate fell 50 years ago. We're civilians. Just a salvage crew. The boy's gaze moved over them, cold and calculating. Directive Section 7, in absence of military authority, asset defaults to survival mode pending retrieval. He was a weapon. Programmed for war. Left alone to survive. Flynn stepped forward, heart pounding. You must be hungry. He held out a protein bar. Nutritional requirements minimal. Cryostasis reduces metabolic function to 12% baseline. The boy watched him carefully, tracking the bar like a threat. Then, slowly, he took it. Query, tactical designation. I'm the cook. Medic 2, sort of. The boy nodded once, accepting the strange kindness. Dual role assignment. Efficient. That night, the crew sat quietly, watching Echo 7, or David, as they started to call him, learn what it meant to be more than numbers and orders. Grail grumbled but let him help in the engine room. Syl took him flying through asteroid fields, teaching him to feel joy in danger. Flynn shared stories and food, showing him how fear could be strength. Captain Kovar watched from his chair, seeing his own haunted past reflected in the boy. He had once been a man like David's makers, calculating, cold, focused only on numbers and outcomes. But now, with this strange, broken crew, something different was growing. A spark of purpose. A flicker of family. A chance for something more than function. Outside, the stars burned bright, silent witnesses to the birth of a new life in the deep void. The Redemption's chain hummed quietly as it moved through the nebula, the ancient pod secured in the cargo hold. David sat alone in a corner, eyes fixed on a flickering star chart. His posture was still perfect, straight and precise, but something inside him was beginning to change. Flynn approached carefully, carrying a small tray with a warm drink. Here, he said softly. I made this for you. It's not a protein bar. David glanced up, his dark eyes studying the cup. He sniffed it, his nostrils flaring. Olfactory data indicates positive psychological response in historical human populations. What is this substance? Tea. It's warm. It helps with comfort. David's gaze lingered on the cup before he reached out and took it, his fingers trembling just slightly. The warmth spread slowly through him, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. He took a small sip, then another. It is tolerable. Flynn smiled gently. More than that, kid. It's good. Syl's laughter echoed from the cockpit as she called David over. Come on, don't just sit there. Let me show you how to fly a ship for real. David stood and followed, his steps sure but curious. The bridge was a clutter of salvaged tech and glowing screens, but under Syl's hands, it came alive. She was fast and fearless, weaving the freighter through asteroid fields and narrow corridors of space with wild skill. "See that cluster," she said, pointing. "Nav says go around. Boring, safe, slow. But I say, screw that." David studied the data. Calculations confirm increased risk of breach by 19.2%. Sil grinned. "Exactly. More exciting, right?" The freighter darted between rocks and debris like a living thing, engines humming with power. David's eyes tracked her movements, fingers twitching on the armrests as if trying to mimic her controls. "Why take the risk?" he asked quietly. "Because sometimes, flying isn't about getting there safe. It's about feeling alive." Joy. David was silent, processing the word. Joy. A chemical reaction, a feeling with no tactical value. But maybe that was the point. Grail, meanwhile, kept her distance. The Jordian engineer's 4 arms moved with skill and strength, maintaining the aging ship. But when David approached her workshop, watching quietly as she worked on a plasma conduit, she bristled. "What do you want?" she asked, voice rough. David pointed. "Torque on coupling exceeds manufacturer specs by 8%. Where patterns show standard torque insufficient." Grail blinked, surprised. "You saw that just by watching?" "Affirmative. Also noted polishing on valve casings." "Why?" she growled. "No tactical value." Grail sighed, a rare softness in her eyes. "Sometimes, it's about pride. Doing a job right, even if no one sees." David hesitated, then nodded. "Understood. Purpose beyond function." For the first time, Grail saw the boy beneath the weapon, the curious child learning to feel. One evening, Kovar found David in the observation lounge, staring out at the swirling nebula. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling beside him. David's voice was low. "Sleep cycle disrupted. Heightened alertness. Prepared for combat. This place is unfamiliar." Kovar sighed. "I knew people like your handlers. Cold, calculating. Thought in numbers. I was one of them." The purple hues of guilt flickered across his faceplate. "You show signs of guilt. Negative outcomes from past decisions." Kovar nodded. "I've lost people. Good people. Because I reduced them to numbers." David was silent. "I am an asset." "No," Kovar said firmly. "You're a kid. You're more than that. You have purpose." David turned back to the stars. "The crew's actions reduce optimal outcomes. Yet they survive. How much do you think?" Kovar asked. David was quiet. "Not calculable." "Exactly. Purpose can't be measured. It has to be chosen. Felt." Days passed. David's words softened. "Thank you," he said, reading it from a manual but meaning it. He asked Grail questions about her work, even tried a joke about Sil's risky flying. The joke was dry, but Sil's laughter warmed the room. Then the alarms screamed. 3 ships dropped from hyperspace, aggressive and armed. Vokari raiders. Sil's smile vanished. "They want the asset." Kovar was on the bridge, Grail and Flynn behind him. David sat rigid, eyes unfocused, the weapon returned. Vokari hunting pack. Lead interceptor, dual plasma cannons. Support corvettes, high maneuverability. He listed their weaknesses and options: strike lethal and fast, or use a risky, non-lethal plan. Kovar hesitated. The old cold logic said kill first, ask later. But he looked at his crew, their faces full of hope and fear. "We go with Beta," he said. "We survive. But on our terms." The battle was chaos. Sil flew like a dancer through fire. Grail vented coolant, creating a blinding cloud. Flynn prepared a laser to overload enemy shields. Shots hammered the chain's shields. The enemy adapted. Survival odds dropped. Stay with it, Kovar ordered. Flynn's hand shook but steadied as he fired the laser. The lead ship's engines exploded. Escape pods launched. The raiders fled. But not without cost. Grail was wounded, bleeding heavily. Flynn's hands trembled as he worked to save her. David watched, confused by the fear in Flynn's hands and the courage that followed. That night, David sat again in the observation lounge, voice low. The lowest survival probability was 37%. I calculated acceptable losses. Flynn handed him tea, warm and comforting. I couldn't say it, David admitted. The optimal loss was you. Flynn smiled gently. Because you're afraid of me. David considered this. Fear is a tactical liability. But you acted anyway, Flynn said. David nodded slowly, beginning to understand. I am human, he whispered. The crew of the Redemption's chain had settled into a strange new rhythm. David, the boy once only a weapon, was slowly learning what it meant to be human. His voice softened, his posture relaxed. Still sharp and precise, but touched with something new, curiosity, warmth, even a trace of humor. One quiet morning, David found himself standing at the entrance of Grail's workshop. The smell of grease and coolant was strong, but there was something comforting in the clutter. Grail was bent over a broken power conduit, her 4 arms working with steady determination. I'm here to help, David said, voice calm but firm. Grail didn't look up. You sure? Last time you scared the hell out of me with your torque math. David smiled faintly. I have learned. Purpose beyond function, right? She grunted, finally meeting his eyes. All right, but don't slow me down. Together they worked in silence. At first, David's movements were mechanical, efficient, every action measured. But under Grail's watchful eye, he began to take care, aligning parts with a gentle precision, polishing surfaces no one would see, but that made the whole ship feel better. This is good, Grail said, her voice softer than before. Not just working, but making it beautiful. David nodded. Beauty has no tactical value. Nope, she laughed. But it makes a difference. Later, Syl dragged David to the cockpit. Ready for round 2 of flying lessons? David hesitated, then nodded. The freighter slid through space, weaving through asteroid fields and debris. Syl pushed the ship faster, sharper, showing David how to feel the ship's movement, not just calculate it. Flying isn't just math, she said, grinning. It's art. David watched her, eyes bright. I am learning art. Their laughter filled the bridge. Meanwhile, Flynn's gentle care continued to break through David's armor. The medic shared meals and stories, teaching him about fear, courage, and kindness. One evening, as the stars wheeled outside, Kovar joined David in the observation lounge. Have you thought about who you are now? Kovar asked. David's gaze was steady. I am no longer just a weapon. I choose. Kovar's faceplate shifted from doubt to something warmer. Good, he said. Choosing is what makes us human. But peace was fragile. A new message arrived, crackling with authority. The Terran Confederacy. Earth's government. They had tracked the Directorate's signals for decades. Now they wanted David back. The crew gathered in silence. The offer was simple, a home, advanced medical care, a chance to be part of saving humanity. But the price was control. The boy would become an asset again, a weapon, not a child. David studied the message. Home is where you choose to stay. The crew stood with him. Family was more than blood and laws. When the Confederacy's envoy arrived, Dr. Lena Koras, she was cold and powerful, demanding the boy be returned. Kovar faced her, voice steady. David is not property. He is a member of my crew. Corazza's tone hardened. You will comply, or face consequences. David looked at his crew, the stubborn engineer, the fearless pilot, the caring medic, the captain who understood pain and hope. I choose this ship. This family. My home. The room held its breath. Corazza's fury flickered but she withdrew, leaving a data pad with David's full file, the proof of what he had been made for. Alone, David opened it. Faces of strangers, his genetic parents, proud scientists unaware their work would create a weapon. He closed the file. Family is not just DNA, Flynn said softly. It's the people who teach you to be more than you were made to be. David nodded, holding the warm bread Flynn offered. No longer just fuel, but a shared moment, a connection. Thank you, David said, voice quiet but full. The stars outside burned on. The redemption's chain turned away from Earth, away from easy answers, toward a future they would build together. A broken ship, a strange crew, and a boy who was learning how to be human. The redemption's chain pushed deeper into the unknown, a battered freighter now carrying more than cargo, carrying hope. David sat by the viewport, watching the nebula's swirling colors fade into endless stars. His hands, once rigid and calculating, now moved with gentle purpose as he traced patterns in the air. Captain Kovar joined him silently, the two sharing a quiet moment amid the hum of the ship. You've come a long way, Kovar said softly. David nodded. Learning purpose is difficult. Calculations alone do not provide answers. Kovar's faceplate flickered deep blue with understanding. It's more than numbers. It's feeling what you can't measure. Below decks, Grail worked alongside David in the engine room. Her initial suspicion had softened into reluctant respect. You're not just repeating commands anymore. You think for yourself. David's gaze was steady. I am choosing. Their work was slow but precise. Grail showed him how to find beauty in function, a polished valve, a perfectly aligned conduit. David began to understand pride beyond efficiency. On the bridge, Syl pushed the ship's engines, teaching David to fly with instinct, not just logic. Feel the stars move around you, she said. Not everything can be planned. David's eyes widened as the stars spun past the viewport in silent grace. For a moment, he was not a soldier or a machine, just a boy falling through space. Flynn's quiet kindness remained the heart of the crew. One night, he found David staring into the dark. Thinking? Flynn asked. David nodded slowly. Wondering about fear. About courage. Flynn smiled. Fear isn't weakness. It's what makes us human. Facing it is what makes us strong. The boy's eyes reflected the soft light of the ship. I want to be strong. Their peaceful days were shattered when a new threat emerged, a brutal Volcari warship lurking near the mining colony. The raiders were hunting the chain, eager to claim the legendary Echo 7. The crew scrambled. Syl's fingers flew over controls as alarms blared. They're coming fast. Shields at 60%. David's voice was calm, cold. The weapon was back. Options? He listed two: strike hard and deadly, or use a risky plan to disable without killing. Kovar's heart pounded. The old captain wanted to unleash fury, but the new man chose differently. We survive. Without killing. The battle was fierce. Plasma bolts lit the darkness as Syl danced through fire, Grail vented coolant to blind enemy sensors, and Flynn prepared a laser pulse to disable engines. Shots slammed the chain's shields, sparks flying. The odds dropped. Hold on. Kovar shouted. Flynn's hand shook, but he fired the laser. The raiders' engines exploded, and escape pods launched. The enemy fled. But not without cost. Grail was hit, blood flowing freely from a deep wound. Flynn's hands trembled as he worked to save her. David watched, confused by fear and courage mingled together. That night, in the observation lounge, David admitted a painful truth. "I calculated acceptable losses," he said quietly. "Your loss was optimal." Flynn looked at him gently. "Because I'm your friend. You were afraid for me." David paused. "Fear is a tactical liability. Yet I acted." Flynn nodded. "That's courage." David's voice broke the silence. "I am human." The stars outside seemed to shine brighter, witnessing a weapon becoming a person. The aftermath of the battle left the Redemption's chain scarred but alive. Grail's wound had been tended with care, and slowly, the crew began to breathe again. Yet a new tension hung in the air. The Terran Confederacy's message still loomed, a shadow threatening to pull David away. David stood alone in his quarters, the data pad from Dr. Korass opened before him. Genetic markers, psychological profiles, cold records of a weapon forged by science and war. He stared at the photo of two scientists, his biological parents, strangers whose choices had shaped his existence but never his soul. The quiet knock on the door startled him. Flynn entered, carrying a tray with warm tea and fresh bread. "You're thinking too hard," Flynn said softly, setting the tray down. "You don't have to carry it all alone." David looked at the bread, then up to Flynn's whiskered face. "Family is more than genetics." Flynn nodded. "It's the people who teach you how to be more than what you were made to be." David smiled, a rare and fragile thing. "Thank you." Outside, the stars continued their silent dance as the freighter charted a course away from Earth, away from easy answers. The Redemption's chain was now a ship of outlaws, a home built on hope and defiance. The crew gathered on the observation deck. Syl laughed, breaking the heavy silence. "Well, that was suboptimal. I'm pretty sure we're wanted by every government in the quadrant now." Grail grunted but placed a heavy hand on David's shoulder, a silent promise of protection. Kovar stood beside them, faceplate glowing with quiet pride. "We're not just surviving anymore. We're living. Together." David looked around at the crew, his family, and for the first time felt something beyond calculation. "I think," he said slowly, "humanity is about choosing purpose over function, even when the odds say you shouldn't." Syl smiled wide. "That's a good start, kid. A very good start." The Redemption's chain soared through the endless night, carrying a weapon who found his soul, a crew who found their meaning, and a future no algorithm could predict.